Let's now talk about auto-generate interfaces from API response using RapidAPI Client for VS Code. In this, we'll be highlighting more about API development in TypeScript using RapidAPI VS Code Client. TypeScript helps developers by offering static typing, which enforces type checks during development instead of runtime, and consequently, the code quality and readability are also improved. Let's see how you can use the RapidAPI VS Code extension to call APIs in TypeScript. The first step is that we need to find the API to call in our TypeScript application. You can go to RapidAPI Hub and find any of the APIs present over there. I'm going to stick to the famous quotes API that I've used earlier as well. I have subscribed to this API. As you can see, I'm getting this test endpoint as I've subscribed to the free version of this API. The next step is open your Visual Studio Code editor and test the API in RapidAPI VS Code extension. I'm going to click this RapidAPI VS Code extension icon right here from the sidebar menu. I'm going to create a new request by clicking this plus icon right here. To send the request, we need the HTTP request method, endpoint URL, query parameters values, and header values. So let's go back to the famous quotes API and let's now copy the URL and the HTTP method. I'm copying this URL right here, pasting it here in this search bar. The HTTP method is get. I'm selecting that. The next is to add the header values. I have to add two header values, the RapidAPI key and the RapidAPI host as well. So I'm going to copy those two header values and pasting it in here. After adding the header values, the next step is to add the query parameters. For that, I'm moving my cursor down and copying the query parameters for this API. After specifying the query parameters, the header values, the next step is to click this send button. It will send the API request and return the response, which looks something like this on the right hand side. As you can see, I'm getting the status code of 200, which shows that the API is working perfectly fine. And we're done with testing our API. So let's move on to the next step, which is generate TypeScript interface using the RapidAPI extension. A great thing about RapidAPI extension is that it can automatically generate TypeScript interfaces for you. We use interfaces to enforce type checking and make the API call more readable and easy to use in TypeScript application. So let's create an interface to describe the properties of the API response. In the bottom right corner of the request tab, you will see a JSON to this drop-down menu as well. So I'm going to select TypeScript from here and click on this icon, which will generate the code for me. It will generate this interface file for me. As you can see, it defines the properties of the API response. This feature is particularly useful when working with APIs that return complex objects. The final step is to code for the API call. As I have explained earlier in my previous video that the RapidAPI extension automatically generates code snippets in multiple languages. At the bottom, you will see a request snippet button. Select the TypeScript fetch snippet from this drop-down menu right here and then click this icon, the generate code button. You will see a new file with the code snippet in it. It will look something like this. As you can see, this file contains my two header values, the RapidAPI key and the RapidAPI host. To explain more about this feature, let's now quickly create a Next.js application. For that, you need to open the folder that you want your application to be in. I have already made a folder by the name RapidAPI, and now I'm going to open the terminal and type this command npm create -next-app at latest the name of the folder, which is RapidAPI --TypeScript. This command will create a new Next.js app. Now run this app by typing npm run dev in the terminal. This will run the application on localhost 3000. Let's check this in our browser if the app is running or not. I'm going to refresh this and yes, it's working. The next step is that you need to go to this index.tsx file right here. Now in the index.tsx file, I'm going to remove everything that's present from here such that just one div is present. Let's delete all of this. Now let's create a button inside this div. I'm typing button and I want that on click this button should work. So let's do that. Now let's type the name of the function. It's get response. Let's say click me right here, and the button is created. And let's now create that function here by typing async function. The name of the function is get response, and yes, it's done. Now here inside this get response function, I'm going to copy the code generated from the API and paste it inside this right here, and similarly copy the interface, TypeScript interface generated from the API and pasting it here. Let's now save this. Now let's go back to localhost 3000. Here is the button, and obviously you can change the outlook of the button by changing the styles.css sheet. Let's open the console and you see the results right here, and it's working. That is pretty much to it. We have created a Next.js application and integrated the code generated from the RapidAPI client, the extension. And now we know how the RapidAPI VS Code extension can help us call APIs in TypeScript application.